Okay, thank you very much. Can you see my presentation? I mean, I have shared my presentation. Can you see it, Nikhil? Yes. Can everybody see it? Yes. Okay. So, Professor Ayashi, many thanks for this introduction, and many thanks for this invitation. And good morning to everybody, or good afternoon to everybody. Depends on which part of the globe you are now. So I prefer to go down, to get down to the nitty-gritty of my presentation, and I would like to start with this figure. Actually, the land use and transport interactions are in this figure reported. From one side, we have the transportation system, which is made up of the demand system and the supply system. In the supply system, we have infrastructure, services, fares, and routes. The two systems, the two subsystems, supply and demand, interact with each other, producing, the flows on the network. And the two subsystems together have an impact on the activity system. The activity system is made up of the level and location of economic activities, the number and location of households by type, availability of services by area and type, which is, the land market. And the two systems, the transportation system, the activity system, interact with each other through the accessibility, active or passive, or whatever it is. I would like to leave apart for this seminar the environmental impacts and the social impacts that a transportation system has. But I would like to highlight one aspect, which is the social equity aspect that I will deal with at the very end of my presentation. The main topic of this contribution, of my contribution, is if the infrastructure in the supply system is a high-speed rail, what happens? I mean, what is the impact on the activity system? If by activity system we mean residences or economic activities or land prices, the property market. So I would like to say that my main contributions to the literature on the land use and transport interaction models, to be honest, I was the guest, the editor actually of two books, which I can say that have been prototypal. They are prototypal in this respect because the big names of the LUTI models, the ones that really have left a sign, today and in the past, are there. I mean, two books, one on the residential location choice and the other one on employment location choice in cities and regions, both published by Springer. I had the idea of promoting these two books when I was a young PhD student working on location choices, and they were published respectively 2010, 2013, and the big names are there. Michael Wegener is there, Douglas Hunt is there, Paul Waddell is there, Harry Timmermans, David Simmons, Marshall Echenick, Francisco Martinez, Rolf Mokel. I mean, both Michael Wegener and Rolf Mokel, they have contributed in the second book on employment location in cities and regions. So I wanted to highlight this to everybody, because if you want to, I mean, if you don't know about land use and transport interaction models, I mean, these two books are definitely a kind of guidelines, I mean, to understand what we mean by land use and transport interaction. I would like to say another thing. Being editor of these two books, the impact of transport on residential location choice and employment location choice, of course, has been highlighted in these contributions. From the most sophisticated packages to very single model, from the most sophisticated micro simulation approaches to, random utility approaches or regression models. I mean, all the modeling approaches are there. But I wanted to highlight one aspect, and the aspect is that yes, the impact of transport has been highlighted in these two books, but none of the contributions represent the impact of a high-speed rail on residential location choice or on employment location choice. So why not? promoting a new book, why not? Getting in touch with the Springer or Elsevier and asking if they are interested in another book, evaluated this time the high-speed rail impact on location choices, both on residential location choice or employment location choice. This is something that we have to think about. So, well, if the infrastructure is a high-speed rail, what happens to the three systems that I have highlighted? Well, I would like to start from the very beginning, from the definition of high-speed rail. Well, at least in Europe, I can identify three different functional perspectives, functional approaches. I call high speed lines that are passengers oriented, set on 300 kilometers per hour speed lines with non-stop connections between large metropolitan areas. This is the case, for example, of France, Paris-Lyon, for example. Then I call high capacity system the lines that are conceived both of passengers and freight, serving also intermediate cities up to 250 kilometers per hour train services, developed partly on renew existing lines. This is, for example, the case of Germany in Europe. And then we have the third functional perspective or approach, that is the one announcing in the intercity network. I have the idea of Switzerland or England, which is the system that is conceived by speeding up the intercity service till 225 kilometers per hour, combined with frequent coincidence in all the stations to other destinations on the network. After saying that and clarifying this point, the reason why, the question is, if the infrastructure is a high-speed rail, what happens? The reason why many countries are now investing in high-speed rail, it is not only because they increase the transport infrastructure capacity, or they are friends of the environment, with respect to car, but mostly because they promote economic growth and regional development. And it is on this second topic, on this second aspect that my presentation would focus. So the issue that I will deal with during this contribution are reported here. I will talk about high-speed rail and megalopolis formation, high-speed rail and tourist location choices, high-speed rail and temporary offices location choices, high-speed rail and property market, high-speed rail and equity issues. As I said, as I promised in my first slide, I say to you that the social impacts and the equity issues is something that today we have to deal with, absolutely. I will go through these issues through some case studies I've come across during my recent research careers, research activity. Of course, I will let you know that at the end of each topic, of each issue, there is a watch out, an alarm, a sign of alarm, which says, well, we have to go deep into this. We have to still do a lot on this topic. What I do like most of being involved in this analysis of socioeconomic impacts of high-speed rail is the fact that everybody is interested in high-speed rail. All the disciplines can have, an interest in this topic. And this is why in the last years I've been working with the professionals, academics, professors involved in, I am a transportation engineer, but I work also with transport economists, but also people involved in transport geography, people involved in political science, in sociologists, psychologists, anthropologists. I mean, everybody is interested in this topic, and this is the charm and the real beauty of this topic, because all interacting with people having, a different perspective, a different background. I mean, all in this way, you can have an open-minded view on this topic. I mean, I am not a narrow engineer, a narrow-minded engineer. I like to talk with the others. I mean, I am open. So after saying this, let's say where the story starts. The story starts in 2008, when I myself was involved in a project studying the relationship, what happened between Napoli and Roma after the inauguration of the high-speed section between Napoli and Roma. Napoli and Roma is almost 200 kilometers, of course in Italy, where I am from. This is the high-speed rail network in Italy, and as you can see, it connects only the large metropolitan areas, the big cities, Salerno, Napoli, Roma, Firenze, Bologna, Milano, Torino, only the big metropolitan cities. So it is not a capillary system. It doesn't serve all the destinations of the country, probably because of the problem of the shape, probably because, the south is completely abandoned. This network is not capillary. It doesn't serve, all the destinations of the country. So what happened immediately after the inauguration of this section between Napoli and Roma? You should know that before the line was 2 hours. In 2 hours, the travel time was between Napoli and Roma, and vice versa. Today is 1 hour. So you can imagine how life has changed. People live in Napoli and work in Roma, and they go back home in the evening to their wives, to their families. This is something that before was not possible. So people are changing their lives, because of this infrastructure. In 1 hour, for example, in the morning, in the peak period, I don't reach the other side of my city because of congestion. And in 1 hour, you can go to Rome, in another region of Italy. This is something that, the power of high-speed rail in shrinking spaces. And I would like to add shaping places. Why I'm saying shaping places? Because between Napoli and Roma, I realized these are all the matrices between, Napoli and Roma on the different transport modes. But I don't want to go deep into the values. I'm not interested in that. But I would like to say that every day there are commuting flows between Napoli and Roma. Every day people go to Roma, go back to Napoli, and vice versa. So the idea that between Napoli and Roma actually there are so many commuting flows, it gave me the idea of thinking of the question if between Napoli and Roma a megalopolis exists, a mega city or a mega region. So what I did was to start, from the literature, and in the literature I found many definitions of megalopolis, large agglomeration, mega regions, mega cities, megaplexes, megapolitan regions. I do like the definition of Joseph Sussman. He is a professor from MIT, who says that the megalopolis is an integrated economic urban complex which is created by the fusion of multiple cities connected by high speed transportation of 200, 300 kilometers per hour, or the definition by Bloom and his colleagues, who they say that is a geographical area that shares a common labor market and a common market for households and business services. So what is the power of, high-speed rail? Why two cities working together are better than two cities working separately? Well, because of the increased productivity, because of the economic and social challenges that two cities working together can provide with respect to two cities working separately. So how do we know that the megalopolis emerges as a result of high-speed rail investments, deployment? Well, we definitely know, we definitely can observe some phenomena. And these phenomena are between two cities connected, served by high-speed rail, we can arise. Some considerations can be a reason. Significant increase in one-day round trips between a pair of group cities, increase of generated induced demand. Well, definitely between Napoli and Roma, there is an induced demand. Before, people didn't use a high-speed rail, but because of this infrastructure, they started using high-speed rail. So a generated induced demand, this is something really interesting. Induced demand for business trips, increase in the number of daily commuters, decrease in overnight hotel stays. I don't need to stay in Rome, to sleep in Rome, to book an hotel, because in 1 hour I'm back home to my families. So I want to say something, and I wanted to light something. I light something. This phenomenon, of course, can be affected by other factors other than high-speed rail. But definitely, we have observed this, at least for the corridor Napoli-Roma. So, potential corridors to analyze, I was thinking of, corridors, short corridors where the competition is with the car, of course. I mean, a megalopolis can be born thanks to high-speed rail when the competition is with car, not with plane, of course. So I was thinking of corridors in Frankfurt Colin or Madrid Ciudad Real, corridors in Japan, China, and of course, the corridor Napoli-Roma that I call Rona. If this megalopolis, Rona, exists, this will exist. This will imply an institutional change, which means who will be the mayor of this megalopolis? Who will be the one of Roma, the one of Napoli, or another one that will be elected in the future? This is something that, people involved in political science maybe can think about it. So what I did is, you can see here the first alarm. What I did was to start thinking how to model this phenomenon. To be honest, in the literature, there is nothing. I rake my brains over trying to find some quantitative papers in the literature that has faced this topic from a quantity point of view. There is nothing, and I'm looking for people that would like to cooperate with me for a special reason that I will let you know in a minute. So what I did was to simply specify regression models between Napoli and Roma, where the dependent variables are the variation of population, the variation of house prices. The independent variables, and I don't want to go deep into them, are of course among them the travel time, the cost, the frequency, and the comfort of high-speed rail. So I wanted to see whether between this corridor, the variables related to high-speed rail actually had an impact on the variation of population and of house prices before and after the inauguration of this section between Napoli and Roma. Again, I know that the best way to represent this phenomenon is to consider as dependent variables the commuting flows or proxy of the commuting flows, like the tickets sold between Napoli and Roma. But in Italy, it's complicated to get this information. So please help me in developing this topic, because there is nothing in the literature at the moment. So what came out from my analysis was that, of course, considering the Rona corridor and the variation of population, the variation of house prices, has dependent variables. The parameters connected with, high-speed rail were significant to the expected sign. So I thought, well, because on the variation of population and house prices, they had an impact. So high-speed rail actually contributed to these dependent variables on the population variation and house prices. Again, I was thinking of other variables like the changes of salaries. These commuting flows, this exchange between two cities, of course, has brought, according to me, in some case studies, the formation of megalopolis, so megacities. And this is something that we really need as a community working on this topic to develop. Again, nothing has been published on this from a quantitative perspective. The second topic that I would like to focus in this contribution is something very hot at international level. I'm currently working also on high-speed rail and the interrelationship with tourist location choices. Well, you should know that, of course, the transportation system and the tourism market are strictly interrelated with each other. Tourists, in order to reach the different destinations, they need an efficient transportation system, of course, to reach the different destinations, and vice versa. Any improvement in the technologies of, the transportation system have an impact on tourism and vice versa. I mean, they are two systems that work together. So I want again to stress the fact that this is a hot topic. I'm reviewing many papers on high-speed rail and tourism, and I myself have I've written a lot of papers on this topic. But the idea of starting working on high-speed rail and the tourism market came to my mind after reading a Chinese article published on a Chinese online journal, which is the Shenzhen Daily, in the year 2012. Some years have passed now, but again, it is 8 years now that I've been working on this topic, and 12 on high-speed rail. So the idea came to my mind, but after reading this article, passengers with high-speed train tickets from Shenzhen or Gunzhou to Wuhan can enjoy discounts of 30–40% when visiting major tourism attractions in central China's Hubei province in April, a promotion of Hubei tourism authorities said Wednesday. So what I did immediately was to start interviewing, proposing surveys, interviewing tourists. In several cities, I've just reported here some case studies. My beautiful Napoli, today Napoli is like this, you can see the Vesuvio. So I propose, these questionnaires. I submitted this questionnaire to tourists in Napoli, in Roma, and this is, the Royal Palace in Madrid with the help of my friends and colleagues of Transit in Madrid. We started interviewing tourists, asking them what were, well, many things, of course, the socioeconomic categories, but I'm not going to go deep into the survey analysis, but we wanted to understand what was the main transport mode used to reach this important destination for their holidays. And in the case of Madrid and in the case of Roma, the result was that they chose this destination locations independently of the presence of high-speed rail, but they chose high-speed rail for visiting cities close to Madrid, like, for example, Toledo, or visiting cities close to Roma, to go to Florence or to reach Napoli. Because Napoli is in the south, of course, with respect to Rome, so Napoli, for the case study of Napoli, tourists arrive in Naples, in Napoli, because of the presence of high-speed rail. So of course, I wanted to tell you just one way of modeling or trying to quantify this phenomenon. For the case study of Italy, to be honest, I have specified more sophisticated approaches, modeling approaches, but I don't want to bother you with the maths this morning. I mean, this is not the objective of this webinar. I collected information for 99 provinces, Italian provinces, for a period of 2006–2016 for 11 years, and I, specify regression models. And I wanted to, with an aggregate analysis, I wanted to understand whether the Italian tourists or the foreign tourists were affected, for the case study of Italy, by the presence of high-speed rail for reaching the different destination for tourist purpose. The other variables are the airport, if the airport is a second level hub, and then, all the attraction variables like the GDP, the presence of the sea, attraction variables. I'm afraid robbery and crime, of course, they are factors that influence negatively a tourist. Of course, if that destination is famous for its crimes, I mean, that is, of course, a negative parameter. So what it came out from my analysis is that Italian tourists were affected by the presence of high-speed rail, foreign tourists not, of course, because they came by plane, but they use high-speed rail for reaching the different destinations in Italy, of course. So what is the sign of alarm in this topic? The sign of alarm is that many new specifications can be introduced for modeling the impact of high-speed rail on tourists' location choice, destination choice. Many, this is a hot topic, and also with modeling specifications, but also from way of calibrating the models from starting from service, therefore using disaggregated data or aggregate data, for example, the census data, like in the case I have reported here. But let's go to another topic that I'm fond of. Wow, I can say that, I am the daughter of an architect. I grew up in this wonderful world of architecture, and I'm fond of architecture, to be honest. High-speed rail stations and temporary offices. What do I mean by this? How high-speed rail station can have an impact on the location of temporary offices. What are these temporary offices? Well, first of all, stations. High-speed rail stations, they are no longer considered as just nodes in a network, but this is an old story. They are places in an area, and beautiful places, pieces of artwork, wonderful pieces of artwork. I am fond of the contemporary architecture. I'm fond of Calatrava. Look at these stations in Reggio Emilia. Look at the one in Belgium. They are fantastic. Look at Norman Foster. He's an English architect. Look at the one, you know, in Saudi Arabia. And of course of Zaha Hadid. I'm afraid she's no longer with us. I mean, she died some years ago, but this is the Napoli Afragola high-speed rail station, you know, in my town. Beautiful pieces of artwork, but also, and not only this, high-speed rail stations are places where you can shop. High-speed rail stations are places where you can work. High-speed rail stations can foster the development of temporary offices inside or around the high-speed rail station itself. But what are temporary offices and why are they conceived for mobile workers? I mean, life is changing. Look at us. We are at home working, smart working. But I mean, before COVID-19 and after COVID-19, you know, life has changed. People move, people, I mean, the mobile workers are people who do not own head offices. They are the ones who do not, I mean, they're pushed to travel in order to have their meetings everywhere. So temporary offices are offices that can be rented for short time periods. For example, 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 week, 3 months. And Radius is the world leader provider of temporary offices all over the world. You know, Radius had a fantastic idea. The promoter of Radius is an Englishman called Mark Dixon. And what did he think? He think that considering that people are moving, mobile workers, etc., he realized that placing these temporary offices that can be rented for short time periods in strategic places that I called third places, it was a strategic idea. It was a genial idea. Where did he place these Radius offices? Inside airports. For example, if you go to Schiphol, you can find Radius office. Railway stations, high-speed rail stations in France. La Gare Pardieu in France has high-speed rail, has Radius offices. Le Mans, for example, and many other parts in France. But everywhere in the world, in Germany, in Japan, Radius offices are everywhere. If you go to the website, I mean, you probably didn't know about that. Service stations, you know, retail centers, shopping malls, I mean, where people meet, have their meeting, and then they go back. So in Italy as well, we have Radius offices in Milano, in Torino, Roma, and Napoli. Napoli, my town. Look at these temporary offices. These temporary offices are wonderful, smart places, you know, where people can everything. I mean, they have the Wi-Fi, they have the secretary, they have the video conference, they have smart offices, you know. And on the 6th floor of the building of the central station in Napoli, inside the high-speed station, we have temporary offices. So what I did was to interview the clients in Napoli. Understand why did they choose these temporary offices. They chose, the 37% of the clients chose these offices because they were inside the high-speed station. So the strategic location, you know, because of high-speed rail, you know, people arrive by train and then they go back. They have the meeting and then they go back by train. And if they live in another part of Italy, of course, or in another part of Japan, another part of France, etc. I wanted to say also that in Napoli was a surprise, really surprising that it was also rented, these offices were also rented by local workers and low-income monthly workers, but I'm not going to go deep into this aspect, but I wanted to generalize this, and I wanted to tell you that in the literature, again, there is nothing about the idea of modeling, of understanding this phenomenon and modeling the way in which high-speed rail actually can affect, you know, the location of temporary offices, trying to model this phenomenon, what the client has in mind and what the promoter has in mind. So we have two different perspectives to consider. High-speed rail and the land market. UK, high-speed 1. Section 1 was inaugurated in 2003, connecting Ipswich with the south of England Kent, Ipswich to Ashford, and you know that the line under the Channel Tunnel crosses the Channel Tunnel, it goes to Paris and Brussels. The second section was inaugurated in 2007, and it connects Ipswich with London St Pancras. London St Pancras, which was inaugurated in 2007, is the high-speed rail in London, and the second high-speed rail station, was inaugurated in 2009 and is Stratford high-speed rail station. I wanted to tell you that if you go back to London after this COVID-19, I mean, when it will be possible to travel again, go to St Pancras. It is an amazing station, the combination of the beauty and the old, and it was renewed. St Pancras is in the Camden Borough of London, close to King's Cross, you know, a station that everybody knows. So in the center of London. And you see that there was a project of renewal of the station and the surroundings. And then Stratford, the International High-Speed Rail Station. Please go to Newman and go and see this station. This is absolutely amazing. I was really impressed by what they did. I mean, it is the place of the Olympic Park. This station was conceived for the Olympic Games, which were held in London in 2012. And around the high-speed rail station, there were so many new buildings, shopping malls, the Olympic Park that was built, of course, for the Olympic game. So what I did was to understand and to analyze how high-speed rail stations, how Stratford International High-Speed Rail Station and, of course, the St Pancras High-Speed Rail Stations could have affected the land market around, you know, the stations. The very share approach is the hedonic pricing models. So what I did was to collect information. And I did this job with the famous Peter Rietveld. I'm afraid he's no longer with us, John Preston, that probably you know them. And what I did was to consider bands of increasing distance from the stations. You know, so bands 1, band 2, 3, and 4. So I consider how, with increasing distance to the station, from the station, how was the effect? And you know, the hedonic pricing model that everybody knows, the dependent variables is the property price. And then we have so many independent variables that I'm not going to list, but I wanted to focus your attention on the temporal variables, which are the sold year. So is a dummy variable whether that property was sold in that year or not. And then the images variable, band 1 if there is high speed rail, band 2 if there is no longer the high speed rail in that band 3, etc. So for the Stratford International High-Speed Rail Station, I wanted to tell you that the best model performance was the one of the log model, but I'm not going to go deep into the analysis of the specification and estimation. I wanted just to check and to show you the values of the property when they were sold. Look at them. Look at them. They increased till the year 2009, and then they decrease again for increasing again. The decrease was in 2009, which was the year of the economic crisis. And then look at the band's value. The beta parameters are of, you know, decreasing value with increasing distance from the station. Look at them. And of course, all the attributes are significant because it is student. Then look at the St Pancras. Again, in this case, the better performance was provided by the box-cox both and side model. But again, I don't want to show you, you know, this. I mean, I don't want to go through the maths, but just, you know, the result. For the case study of St Pancras, look at the values of the bands. The first one, band 1, is significant. The other one starts becoming negative with increasing distance from the station. Again, a lot in the literature on short rail accessibility impacts on the land market, but on long distance rail accessibility on the land market, there are so few contributions in the literature. This has been, you know, not considered so much. So this is something that should be reconsidered again. I mean, the impact of light rail, I'm still reviewing papers on this topic with the same approaches. We really need to think of something different at the global level, how to face this. I'm fed up with, you know, the hedonic pricing approaches. We really need to think as a community of something different. The last but not the least, and I will conclude, this is a topic that I think we cannot take separately. I mean, this is something, especially in a world that you consider, you know, that the moment we are living, and you know, in general, before this COVID-19, the social exclusion, and you know, is something that we really need to. We have, you know, the right to think about that. So I would like to start before saying what I mean by social exclusion or equity issues related to transport. I wanted to give you a definition of social exclusion and poverty in order to clarify everything. According to Silver, social exclusion is a multidimensional process of progressive social rupture which detach groups and individuals from social relations and institutions and prevent them from full participation in normatively prescribed activities of the society in which they live. This definition is completely different from the concept of poverty. In a report of the United Nations on 1996, poverty is a condition of severe deprivation of the human needs: health, safe drinking water, sanitation facilities, shelter, education, information. So this is two topics that are completely different. Being socially excluded doesn't mean to be, you know, poor. So low-income categories are not necessarily experiencing social exclusion. So what is the relationship between social exclusion and the transportation system? In the literature, this has been treated as the reduced accessibility to opportunities due to a not efficient transportation system. So what I did was to take the 7 factors of social exclusion provided by Church and his colleagues in a famous paper published in the year 2000 in Transport Policy. And these 7 principles that you see here are applied to the transportation system. And I readapted these 7 principles to high-speed rail. And I wanted to highlight, I promise I am almost come to the end, I'm coming to the end. I wanted to highlight you the 3 most important ones: geographical exclusion, economic exclusion, and time-based exclusion. By geographical exclusion, I mean that that infrastructure, that high-speed rail infrastructure, excludes a priori destinations, the destinations that are not served. So we have a geographical exclusion or a territorial exclusion because the network doesn't go everywhere in that country. Then I call economic exclusion the fact that high-speed rail is still expensive. So not all the socioeconomic categories can afford this service because it is expensive. So this means excluding a priori some socioeconomic categories, and this is not fair because high-speed rail is still expensive in many countries. By time-based exclusion, I mean that the departure arrival times, the scheduled departure arrival times don't match those decided by the users. So what I did was to employ surveys with the help, again, of the Transportation Research Group with John Preston in Southampton, with the help of my colleague José Manuel Vassallo of the Transit Group in Madrid and myself. I prepared the same questionnaire and we submitted to non-high-speed rail users. And we wanted to understand what were the main factors excluding them from the use of high-speed rail, at least in these 3 countries. Of course, this can be shared and adapted to other countries. It came out that, and it's not a surprise, that the most important factor excluding UK non-high-speed rail users is the economic one. High-speed rail is not considered a real alternative transport mode. As you know, it doesn't serve all the destinations. It's just a line going from Ipswich to Ashford and from Ipswich to St. Pancras. And it is still an expensive, very expensive transport alternative. I don't consider it an alternative transport mode. And in Italy, the geographical exclusion is the mostly felt by non-high-speed rail users, because I said to you at the very beginning of this presentation, I mean, it is not a capillary system. The South is abandoned. I mean, it serves only the main and the large metropolitan areas. So Salerno, Rome, Napoli, Roma, Firenze, and the rest. How about the rest? So, I mean, the result that the geographical exclusion was the mostly felt factor, you know, for preventing users from choosing high-speed rail was not a surprise. On this topic, there is still a lot to do. And I would like to finish with my current engagement. My current engagement is this one. I have promoted, I'm the guest editor of a special issue of the journal Transportation Research A. I'm afraid that the call is on, and this special issue will be published probably next July. Quando Dio Sotuzar like the idea, he's one of the editor-in-chief of this journal, like a lot this idea. And I can say, now with the publication of the papers are in progress, that there is still a lot to do. What were the questions that I asked at the international level, at the level of the globe, to all my colleagues? The question that we really need to answer, and some of them have been answered in my special issue. Before investing a large amount of money, in a high-speed rail system, decision makers should wonder who will be the users of the new services. Is high-speed rail a priori excluding some socioeconomic categories such as low-income people, immigrants, women? We have to analyze the socioeconomic profile of high-speed rail users, and you will see, my dear colleagues, at the global level, that the high-speed rail socioeconomic profile user is a businessman, is still high income. High income is an high income socioeconomic category. What are the factors excluding non-high-speed rail users from choosing high-speed rail as an alternative transport mode? I gave you an idea with the factors proposed by Church and adapted to high-speed rail by me. Are the destinations not served by high-speed rail excluded from a possible development of tourists and other growth factors? Is high-speed rail a factor of disparity, of inequality? When we build new infrastructure such as a high-speed rail, we really need to wonder, how is this system should be inclusive. I mean, I don't like the idea of being, of course, of excluding some socioeconomic categories or not serving some destinations. Of course, the geography and the shape of a country has an impact, but watch out. Can the introduction of more than one railway company competing on the same high-speed rail network solve the question of social equity? This is something amazing that has happened in my country. You know that from the year 2012, we have a private company. This is something unique in the world. It doesn't exist anywhere in the world. We have a private company, which is a Nuovo Treno Viaggiatori, NTV, which is competing on the same high-speed rail network with, the Trenitalia. Trenitalia is, our state company. And the competition between the two has brought a decrease in the ticket fares. And I wanted to tell you that none of the two companies have experienced a decrease in passengers. Trenitalia, even with the competition, has increased. Rail wins. Rail wins. The other thing is, what are the policies to make high-speed rail available to all socioeconomic users? Can we promote policies to make this system more inclusive from, for example, the ticket point of view? Well, France has, for example, introduced Ouigo. Ouigo is the low-cost, high-speed rail service promoted by the state company, SNCF, and make this, and of course, this Ouigo makes the system, the high-speed rail system, more inclusive. Of course, the schedule is different. I mean, you have to adapt the timetable to, the desired time, the travel time and the travel departure, because of course the trains are concentrated in not in the whole day. For example, in the morning and the evening there are no Ouigo trains, but for example in the morning, at lunchtime or in the afternoon there are. So I think I've finished with this, with my current engagement, which is this one. And again, there is still a lot to do, and each question, each point I have highlighted here can be a topic that we can discuss and can we develop in our future research. Because again, this special issue, I'm aware of what I have received, and again, I can tell you that there is still a lot to do. Thank you very much.